Step 2. Learning the game. This video is part of a series of videos covering everything you need to know to get into speedrunning. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to properly learn to speedrun any game. Once you have chosen a game to speedrun, the next step is to join the community. If you have any questions, you could post them in the forums, and I would always suggest joining the Discord. Speedrunning communities are often pretty small and very welcoming if you're genuinely curious. They have a lot they're willing to teach you. Joining the Discord shows to the community that you're least interested, and you'll generally get much faster responses there than on the forums. Most larger games will at least have somewhat of a tutorial, maybe even a complete tutorial of the run. These can be found in the guides section. If the game you're looking to run is a bit more obscure, then you might not be able to find a tutorial. If this is the case, I strongly recommend that you take a run about halfway up the leaderboard and follow that as your guide. If there are any strategies or skips that you don't understand how they work, always ask in the forum or the Discord. This is when it becomes extremely important to find the active runners and follow them on Twitch. The best time to ask questions of a runner is when they're doing runs, because when they're playing a game live on stream, they can better illustrate how things may work. Most runners will be overjoyed that someone wants to join in on the fun, and will be really helpful in your learning process. In my example, you need to downpatch the game to a previous version to be able to do certain skips. I like these skips and wanted to be able to do them, so I joined the Discord, and they had the previous versions with tutorials on how to set them up, and people were always ready to help if I had any questions. This could also be found in the resource section of speedrun.com. Sometimes, if you're running a game on console, you will need to obtain a certain version of the game, like an early release cartridge. If this is the case, I suggest you start running without it if it is not absolutely necessary, as you want to make sure you enjoy it first before you spend too much money on the hobby. Now that you have your resources at your disposal and a support system that you can go to if you have any questions, you can jump into learning the game. There is a few different philosophies when it comes to learning. I suggest you break the game into sections, short, digestible chunks that you can learn and practice. With my example of Left 4 Dead 2, this is simple. I'll take each campaign and break them apart into sections to practice. And in my example, these sections to practice actually have their own leaderboards. They are individual level leaderboards. It is important to note the existence of individual level strategies. These are strategies that are specific to individual level runs. Generally, because they are either too hard or too inconsistent to do in full runs. Be wary of this when using individual level runs as reference. The strategy I employ is to take these chunks and practice the first one until you can do it consistently. This may take a while, as is the first section of the game. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it just has to be good enough to be able to continue. Keep in mind that in some games, you will have to do some sections really well in order to do other sections later correctly. In my example, if I don't get a boomer bile in the first section, I can't do the proper strat for the fourth section. After you have an understanding of the first section, move on to the next one. Once that section is done, do sections 1 and 2 back to back in a single sitting, until you can do that successfully. This creates a really strong foundation, and makes sure that the way you're doing things would work in a real run. Repeat this process adding new sections into your learning until you have a large enough section of the game memorized to be able to move on to the next. I wouldn't suggest grouping more than 30 minutes of the game into chunks, because then at that point you're basically doing full runs. In my example, I am taking each of these chapters and adding them up until I have a full campaign. Once I have a full campaign completed, I do the next one from the beginning, starting the process over again with another large chunk. The main downside of this strategy is that you'll not get to do any full runs for maybe a few sittings. If you want to just hurry up and do a few runs, there is another strategy that you may want to try. The other strategy is the learn by doing strategy. Lots of people will learn a game just by following someone else's run and trying to go through all the way in one sitting. Then, after you complete your first run, take notes of the sections that will need the most work and practice. Practice them until you can do them correctly. Each of these techniques has their own drawbacks. For example, your foundation may not be as sturdy if you do the learning by doing. but you will finish more runs. If you do the grouping method, you will have a better grasp of the game as a whole, but might not see immediate results. These are just two of the many ways to learn a game, and which way will work for you really depends on the game and the player. Harder, more technical games might be better suited to the grouping method, and games where you're more familiar with them may be better suited to learning with doing. Resetting and submitting runs. Resetting is most of speedrunning. Believe it or not, most people when they start to speedrun become perfectionists very quickly, always wanting to get the perfect start, and resetting over small things that don't really matter in the grand scheme. This is a huge trap. Avoid this at all costs. As someone who has learned over 8 different speed games and has been doing it for over 2 years now, I can tell you, resetting is too often the biggest issue plaguing old and new runners. My general rule is the first few times you attempt to run, you should only do no reset runs. That means never reset no matter what happens. Just finish the run. This will get you a time to compare against, and it will give you a bit of motivation, showing yourself that you can in fact do it. In some games this is not possible. For example, if you're running a game like Resident Evil Remake, if you die, it's literally over. You can no longer play. This is the exception, however. Most games this is not the case, and can be continued to completion. Once you have finished a run or two, it is time to set up splits. Splits are a timing tool that speedrunners use to keep track of their times. It's a bit more complicated than a traditional timer. Splits are generally used to keep track of times for individual sections, as well as the whole game. For this, I strongly suggest that you use the application livesplit. It's totally free and super customizable. In this video, I will cover a bit about how it should be used, but if you want to be shown exactly how to set it up and what it can do, check out my livesplit complete tutorial. Livesplit has a couple of functions. Firstly, there are splits. These are time sections of the game that are part of the greater whole of the timer. So if you take our example from earlier practice and timed each section, put them together, each section would be one split, add up to the whole game. The point of this is to be able to easily and precisely track where you are losing time. Not everyone uses splits, but they're a super helpful tool when getting more information on how to improve. So let's say you made a livesplit timer that was 10 splits long. Once you complete the first section of the game, you would split, and it records how long that section took to complete. But the timer does not stop. It simply starts tracking the next section. Once the first section of the game is complete, you'll have to tell the timer to split. This can be done manually by pressing a hotkey or automatically by what is known as an auto splitter. Auto splitters are scripts that detect certain actions in the game and automatically send that information to livesplit, telling it when to split. Most somewhat popular speed games will have auto splitters. However, if your game does not have an auto splitter, where to split is totally up to you. I would suggest places like loading screens or door transitions, as they are much easier times to press a hotkey than something like a boss death. Some games also have an in-game timer. The games that do often have a plugin made for them for livesplit that enables you to make the timer based off of the in-game timer. The same thing goes for load removers. These things can usually be found inside livesplit itself, as there is a server dedicated for people to store these scripts for easy use. Once you finish your first timed run with splits, you now have a personal best. Congratulations, you are now a speedrunner. It may not be a good time, but the whole point is getting better. Now you will notice a few things when you go to do another run. Your time for each section when you split will disappear and be replaced by a red, green, or gold number. These colors and numbers are significant. This is your pace. Green is good. That means you are on a faster pace than your personal best. Red is bad. That means that you're on a slower pace compared to your personal best. Gold is the best. This means that it was the fastest you have ever completed that section. Plus sign means that you are plus seconds behind your PB. So if you were to finish the run plus 5 seconds, then you were 5 seconds slower than your personal best. Minus is ahead, so the opposite. Minus 5 seconds is a new PB by 5 seconds. There are slightly more complicated colors and numbers as well. Light greens mean that you are still faster than your PB, but you lost some of your lead in the last section. Light red means that you are still slower than your personal best, but you've made up some of the difference between your personal best and your current run in the last section. Gold overwrites these colors, but still has a positive or negative next to it. Golds are also important because they make up your sum of best. A sum of best is all of your gold splits added up. So basically, think if all of your best segments were played back to back, what your time would be. This is the ideal speedrun. Now that you have splits, understand how they work, and have finished a few runs, it's time to submit your personal best. Some people think that they don't want to submit their time because it isn't good enough yet. I strongly disagree. Personally, I think that you should submit your first run with splits. This is because you'll want to show the community that you are serious. Submitting a run is further than 90% of people get when they start speedrunning. If you do it, then it shows you are serious about learning, and the community will often be more open to helping you out. After that, though, I do not suggest you submit every personal best, because the moderators will have to verify those runs, and if you're going to get a new personal best every day, because you're new, you can end up creating a lot of work for people. So submit your first run, and then maybe wait a little bit for your time to get better before submitting again. This will also work as a time capsule of sorts for your first run. It'll be saved on the leaderboard, and you can always check back on it to see your progress whenever you would like. All past submissions are stored on speedrun.com on your profile and obsolete runs. You may note when submitting your times on speedrun.com that you have to record your run and provide video evidence. If you need help with this, check out my recording and streaming speedruns tutorial. Speedrunning does a lot of great things for a lot of awesome people. It's one of my personal favorite things in the world and has given me plenty of awesome opportunities. This video series was a huge project. I just wanted to shout out a few people for helping me put it together. Silas, my editor, Barley, Shay, the runners who lent me their footage and their ears, Cheese, TGH, Bach Basoup, Maxi Lobes, Limcube, Henny K, Liquid Wi-Fi, DeCosmic, Anthony Caliber, Oats and Goats, Distortion 2, Graham Pooh Bear, Pulse Effects, Eurus, Brian Otto, all with their links to their Twitch streams in the description below. That covers the main sections of this guide. In the future, there will be more tutorials to supplement this guide, OBS and livesplit tutorials, as well as more detailed explanations of general speedrun things. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and like.